Come in, perfect timing. Yeah. Could leave it there. Hey, loves, happy Wednesday. How are you all doing? As always, it's a pleasure to be here with you all. How's it going? Talk to me. Let me know what you're up to, what's new, what are you enjoying this summer? I always love to hear from you all. Brandy's with us this morning, afternoon, actually. Time flies. It's always good to have you with us, Brandy. I'm super excited about my returning guest today. She is always someone that I enjoy connecting with, and I promise you today is going to be a great show because she's just super magical is what she is. So as always, I appreciate you joining me on another episode of Real Talk, where I get to have real life raw conversations with incredible people from my circles and community. And these people are, just have overcome challenges and really created just amazing. And my returning guest today is Melissa Kim Corter. Melissa is an international best-selling author and speaker, published in numerous books, articles, and interviews. Her methods blend active imagination, archetypal psychology, and ecotherapy into transformational somatic experiences. She utilizes writing as an alchemical vessel to activate the hidden potential within the reader. As a highly empathic, intuitive child, Melissa had a fascination with other people's basements. Dark, unexplored spaces enthralled her, and her insatiable curiosity towards the hidden dimensions of humanity led to decades of exploring the shadow dynamics within the human psyche and nature. She has a master's degree in depth psychology with an emphasis on Jungian archetypal studies and is pursuing a PhD at Pacific Graduate Institute. Help me welcome Melissa Kim Corter.
Hi, my friends. Oh, I'm so excited. We have so much fun.
I know we do. It's super fun, and I'm excited to have you here with us. And you always bring something new, exciting, and just creative to the table. So I'm excited today to have you share what's been happening with you.
Oh my goodness. Yes, it's going to be so fun. I can't wait. Thank you so much for having me. It's just always an honor to connect with you and share, and just it's always amazing and magical where our conversations go. So it's super fun to let other people actually see that process.
I appreciate that. And I appreciate you because it's fun and it just flows.
Yeah.
It just flows naturally. And you've definitely had some, major transitions the last year, some really exciting transitions. Yeah. You moved, cross country from Arizona to both. I love Arizona and I love New York. So you moved to New York. I mean, that's a really big move.
I had no idea what I was getting into. Yeah. Still, it's been a year now, and still, we know this life just keeps unfolding and revealing more gifts and more really interesting dynamics. And lots of change in the last year for sure.
And so coming from, I know you first were in Sedona for a while, then you moved to Flagstaff, very, small, but exciting, unique places to live. Smaller communities, like what has it felt like moving from Arizona, from these small communities to New York City, where it's just it's huge, it's massive, there's so many, it's diverse, it's like crazy.
I love it. There's something about travel, whether you're moving somewhere, living somewhere new, or just going to get a taste of a different location for a little while, that it feels to me like it reveals other parts of us. And so I've been sort of getting to know myself in a different way in a new location. The land is beautiful. Like there's just something so vibrant about the way nature is here. It's, the humidity, of course, affects everything. But it's interesting. Every place has its own, not just energy, but different process in a way that I've experienced. Like living in these different places, it really feels like you become someone else, and it's such an incredible experience. I love being closer and having more community and connection. Just being able to hop in the car and explore and find new things, different things. So it's really been a blessing and a gift for sure.
And And I know like we've stayed connected, and I have seen how like things have unfolded and how it has been a blessing. How is like overall your life your personal, we talked a little bit about your personal life, how it's
Mhm.
changed, but how has your business life changed since you've made that move?
Oh my gosh. Something that I joke around about with in my work with a lot of the my cohort, my colleagues in class for in school, we do a lot of have a lot of conversations about change and transition. And we joke around about the insane amount of death and rebirth that
Oh,
we all seem to kind of go through.
you're
And
not
I
kidding.
think of my business that way. I mean, you've had change, we all have changes in business, but the last year has been, I would probably say, the most dramatic that I've had from beginning 15, 20 years ago, being, I'd say, a little more serious of a business owner. This year, this change has been the most dramatic. It's revealed more areas of opportunity for growth for me. I feel like it's also solidified things along the way. Like, as a business owner, we have so much we're juggling all the time. And part of my change was trying to kind of find myself in all of that and go, okay, what's working? What isn't working? At this point in my life, like I want things that feel really connected, genuine, authentic. So there was like a stripping away of anything that, well, I was gonna say a stripping away of anything that didn't fit. But the truth is I kind of had to strip everything away to even get some sense of clarity of who am I? What do I want at this place and this time? Who do I want to serve? What does that look like? What does it feel like? And more importantly, how do I include myself in that process? Whereas in the past, the way that I ran my business, I tended to overextend and leave my own joy and well-being out. It was so much about others versus me. So now it's like I'm now in this and how I feel matters. So lots of change for sure.
That's so beautiful and powerful because I could relate to that.
Mhm.
Same, being in my business for 25 years and the coaching for 7, I was running it a certain way. And I've also realized over the last year that there were things that I've been doing that I loved and gave me so much passion that no longer brought me that joy.
Yeah.
And I felt an attachment to it because my identity was attached to the business and the way I've done things. So, like as you said, you've been doing a stripping away, and I've had to do a stripping away, and I realized like I had an attachment to the way things were. But I also realized like once you move past a certain threshold, you can't go back.
Right.
So even though these things served me and felt good for me in the past, I feel like I can't do that anymore. I have to go forward in a different way, and that's been a little bittersweet for me.
Yeah. It is. It is. It's bittersweet. It's also such a beautiful example of the work you do, right? Because a lot of us, and I don't mean this in a, I guess in a negative way or to sound judgmental, but you can sort of tell the difference in how you speak that you're very self-aware. You've put a lot of work and a lot of time and energy in getting to know who you are. And I feel like that's so important because when we own a business and we go through these shifts and these changes, you're right, we can absolutely over identify with like a certain
Mhm.
part of our
For sure.
business, or whether the way we did something, the people we're working with, whatever it might be. And that's so important to look at. And I think it's not necessarily something we see modeled a lot in the online world, or, a lot of us go through these changes, but it isn't necessarily that we're really all talking about it and sharing
Mhm.
about it. So it's really inspiring to have these kind of conversations and be like, oh, you're going through that too. How is that for you? What are you noticing, discovering about yourself? And it's deep work. It's really deep work. I had
Yes.
no idea that business would be like such a giant opportunity for me to heal and shift and grow. It's another form of a relationship, you
It
know?
it it really is, and I've noticed over my career that when I was, healing and growing, the business was growing. But,
Mm,
when I was, in, a dark night of the soul, the business would be in the dark, not in dark night of the soul, but and I never believed my coach, but my coach years ago said, "Notice where you are personally, and that's where your business will be." And
yeah.
I was like, "Oh my goodness." But
It
I'm also
sounds simple, but it's really profound.
it's
For real.
profound. Each time you level up, it's like there's all these other, challenges that come with it. And sometimes I'm like, I don't want to do this anymore. But then I also know what's on the other side of those challenges
Yeah.
are the magic that you talk about.
That's right. It's, what just popped into my mind right when you said that is that leveling up, that expansion, that growing. For me personally, that has come from not just sort of when we hear even those terms, it can sound sometimes like expansion. It's very out
Mhm.
there and open. And for me, it was almost this sense of the opposite. To level up, to expand, I had to go deeper within who I was. And that was part of that stripping away, was removing things that were just noise and
Yes.
clutter and all of that to get a sense of who am I? What is this? And that's interesting because as I started to kind of sink further into who am I, getting to know me in this different space across the country, different space in my business, there was an expansion. And it came from that like inward, I want to be so present within my life and who I am. Instead of I had a tendency in the past to escape or to run away or work my way through a problem, right? Being super busy instead of, well, what if I slowed down and got to know who I actually am without all of that, without the attachments like you're speaking to, or the distractions. And it's a completely interesting way, I think, to expand and to level up without realizing that that's what we're actually doing by doing this deep work, and sitting with ourselves in that way.
That's what I've had to do this last year, or I don't know if I've had to, forced to, chose to.
A
I'm
little bit
not
everything.
sure. Maybe it's a little bit of everything, but I haven't been able to. My body hasn't really let me take the type of action I've taken in the past in the business the way I've wanted to, and so I've listened to that, even though I've been resistant to it, and I'm like, okay. I think Christina Northrup talked about this, the seasons,
Mm,
and I said, okay, at the beginning of the year, I just, I went full force. And then there was a point where my body was like, yeah, no, don't do anything. And then it was in that not doing anything. I don't even feel like it was just a nothingness, but it
yeah.
really wasn't a nothingness. It was just allowing myself to be in this space, because I don't believe we always have to be in a place of taking action to create. And I think we miss the magic in that space of not, the word nothingness is coming up. I don't know if that's the right word.
Yeah, that makes sense. That really resonates too, because, I just had this other thought, like when in our typical society, we're rewarded for hustle, for
Yes.
movement, right? For
Mm.
achievement, accomplishment. It's all action oriented. And
Mhm.
so I feel like we can easily misidentify stillness, nothingness, sitting with like I call it a sacred pause,
Mm,
these
yeah.
moments of this sacred pause. We can almost feel lazy and start to beat ourselves up, right? Or have all that inner critic going on, because on the surface, we could feel like, well, I'm not doing anything, right? Nothing's happening here.
Mhm.
You and I know from doing this work, there's a whole lot going on beneath
So
the
much.
surface. But in
Yeah.
those moments, it can be really challenging to sort of reframe, rewire all of those habits of
Mhm.
forward momentum, got to get it done. And being faced with that, like you mentioned, the body speaking to you. I had a similar but different experience where there was just a part of me speaking to me, my soul saying, like, enough is enough, time to stop. Like, you were so gracious in how you worked through your challenges, which were opportunities, right? And you've done such a beautiful job of uncovering the gifts and the blessings through that experience. I had a similar journey, but less about the physical body and more about my mental, emotional well-being. I was just suffering and struggling in this place of like, well, physical burnout too, but this place of like, who am I? What am I doing? What's going on? And not feeling fulfilled. And I had to listen to that part of me, similar to how you listen to the body, to make these shifts and these changes.
Mhm.
And it's true though, there's this moment or many moments where it's like, but what do I do? What's
Mhm.
next? How do I
Right,
overcome this? Right. Versus like
right.
you're saying, what if we just listen to whatever? that is, can we pause? Can we be still? And we're not going to fall apart. We're
Yeah.
not going to like disappear. It's going to be okay. We'll find that magic, you know?
Oh, you know what? I just got very emotional because I love the word stillness and pause as opposed to the nothingness.
Mm,
And you're right. It's in I'm working, with a coach and we're working on preparing for the unknown.
mm,
And I just got a really huge awareness light bulb. It's in that stillness and in that pause that I've taken that I've been able to um get stronger and be prepared for the unknown because I've had some unknowns pop in and I have reacted or responded in a very different way than I have in the past. So that I just have that awareness. It's in the stillness and pause that I've taken that I've kind of gained some, been a little gotten more empowered or strength, or I don't know what you want to call it. I'm like talking out loud right now.
I love it. It's that I love those. That's the thing.
I had an epiphany.
We do that. It's so fun. Like we go back and forth and have these conversations and we're both like, whoa,
Oh, man.
things are happening here. And I
It's
think that's the beauty of having this too, these conversations about these difficult times,
yeah,
and beautiful times,
yeah, it's beautiful times, and I think, I've always had a mastermind group for the last several years, and
Mhm.
recently, over the last year and a half, I haven't. We still have, community, but, again, sometimes there's nothing wrong with us going within ourselves into that stillness and the pause to go deeper on our own.
Right. And who are we, in that place? And some people are really good at having discernment of this is who I am, this is what I feel like. I can know that and differentiate that from others. I wasn't good at that. I didn't know how to do that. So part of my process in that particular journey was needing to pull back and retreat, not disappear and not escape, but pull back to have that sense of like, oh, this is what my thoughts are like without the opinions of others. Not good or bad either.
No.
Just space. Just
Yeah.
space alone gave so much clarity. And like you just said, it's the things that we find when we give ourselves that gift. And it's more difficult these days with the amount of information we're just inundated with. It's just the nature of the world. It's not a bad thing. We're evolving, we're growing, and there's so many opportunities for people to share their voice and share their business and all of this. And it's compounded the amount of sensory data that's just overwhelming our nervous system. So for
Absolutely.
me, I had to like let me step back from all of that, do some healing, get some space so I could come back and then go, okay, now I can sense that. Now I have those boundaries. Now I understand this empathetic relationship of who I am and who others are. So that pause, that stillness, I think it offers so many of us different opportunities, to really know who we are.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for, being here today and bringing me that awareness because, there's moments where I felt lazy.
Yeah,
And it's not that I'm not working and doing things, but I haven't been able putting the intensity that I have. And ladies, it's not lazy.
right.
It's seasons. We go through seasons, and those seasons are necessary because I don't believe I could have dove as deep if I was still taking so much action. And something else that you talked about now is the distractions. And yes, social media is amazing. We get to connect.
Mhm.
But I've been communicating this, within my circles. I feel like it's just too much information. I'm distracted. I feel like my attention span is, not as great as it used to be. And so I was away last week and stayed off as much as possible. And I was much clearer and I was able to be much more focused. And again, there's nothing right or wrong. It's just being aware of all the distractions around us, and that pulls us away from our inner guidance as well.
Absolutely. And I think that's so important. It's, we are all in different places in our lives and our businesses. And sometimes it is It's just necessary to do something that looks radical, you know, to the outside world, but might just be right for you, you know,
Right.
and listening to yourself and really following that. It's so easy to look outwardly towards, like you said, social media. I love it. I'm blessed. I mean, thank God we could do this today
Yeah,
because of this, right?
totally. Yes.
And
And
finding balance with all of that. And it can really make us feel like we're doing something. We're busy. And so when you said that, even just that word lazy, it's such a triggering thing. We have so much resistance to that word. Nobody wants to, I'm going to make an assumption. Nobody wants to feel lazy. Nobody wants to believe that they're lazy. And it's funny because like the ones that sort of have that inner dialogue going on are probably the ones that need to take a damn nap or step away, you know, or shut it down for a week. But it's hardwired in some of us to show up, to be on, you know. So
right.
it's a gift to have these conversations, to be like, we get to choose another way, many other ways to do
Right.
things.
And that belief system, that way I did things served me for a very, very long time. I mean, decades.
Right.
And so just a reminder to be gentle with ourselves because this served us for decades. And in finding a new way to do things, it's going to take time and just to have grace with ourselves. And it's a process and it's a pace. It's not going to be something that happens overnight. My critic still comes up. And I remind myself, like, I'm learning a new way of doing things. I'm in a different season of my life, and it's okay. And I still want to achieve.
That's right.
I think in the past I had an attachment to achievement.
Mhm.
It defined me or it made me feel worthy, whereas now it's just fun,
Yes. I love that.
and so something that we did talk about is how can we, first of all, I want to ask you, what's your definition of magic?
Oh my gosh. So it changes on any given day depending on my mood and where I'm at.
I love
There
that.
really, I mean, there's just so many,
Cool.
so many different things I could say to that. But you know, this season of my life, I'll say that. This season of my life, magic is leaning in to that voice within me that has been there all along and is teaching me to trust that I'm becoming who I've already always been
Mm,
and allowing just the things to fall away that get to fall away, and the things that get to come together will have space to do so. And part of the magic in that process for me is when I give myself permission to be in that space, what will happen is I am usually drawn to be in nature. I'm usually go for a walk, go wander in the woods. And the magic is when you just catch a glimpse, and that might be a feeling, it might be something you see or you sense or you know, but you just catch this glimpse of being so deeply connected to something that's greater than you. And
yes.
I just see that in the natural world around me when I'm not busy, when I'm slowing down, when I'm taking time. And that to me is one of the most magical things because it reminds us we're not alone,
Mhm.
that we are part of something. We are weaved into the fabric of this universe in ways we will never even ever be able to comprehend. And so these little moments of connection, the little moments of synchronicity, I really feel are the alignment of our soul, our ego, our self.
Mm,
And when that alignment happens, we just see something or sense it or feel it, and we can't deny it. I mean, later we can deny it or ignore it, but in that moment it just feels so bigger than us. And that for me is what I've been holding on to as a, I guess a form of magic this whole
mm.
year, getting through the change, the struggles, my own dark night of the soul, which is nights, many nights, I would say. But that magic, even through that, was still there. But I had to make myself available to be with it. I had to choose to see through that lens without dissociating, without avoiding, without running to something external. I had to learn to find this way of I can be in this contrast of not knowing where I'm going, what I'm doing. And there's still magic here. There's still
Mm.
this beautiful unfolding of life happening all around me. And I'm a part of that, even if my mind wants safety and doesn't quite know what's happening. that I would say is something that feels really alive and real and connected for me when it comes to the idea of magic and just the last year, the journey that I've had.
I love that. The magic. And with everything that you said, the word trust came through.
Mm-hmm.
So it sounds like just trusting the unfolding,
Yeah,
in that silence, in the unknown.
absolutely. Absolutely. I just, there's a lot to be said about not knowing all of who we are. And I feel like when you were talking earlier about, we were having that conversation around all the information and all the things. And one thing that I've held on to a little bit, one of our mentors in the program I'm in for school calls it a hermetic intoxication.
Hermetic intoxication. Explain that.
So it's this idea. So we do a lot with mythology and gods and goddesses that mimic like psychological movement and fairy tales and stories so that we can get an idea of what's happening within us psychologically, like how things are coming together and flowing. So we can look to these different ideas, stories, and myths to see how things played out so that we can have another lens, right, to view things with. So the idea of this hermetic intoxication. So Hermes is a god of in between, back and forth communication, and so when you think of the intoxication of that, we can sort of become addicted or consumed by all of this information without integration. And if
Mm,
we're not integrating, we're not all of that that's going on. And this isn't a bad thing at all. It's where we have to have discernment in what we take in,
mhm.
and make real for us. But it starts to overwhelm the nervous system and it can be very disorienting. And we don't quite know, what do I need? What do I not need? There's so much going on. And when we start to integrate little pieces of what it is we're either learning or exposing ourselves to content wise, material wise,
Oh my.
it like this filtering out kind of happens when you trust your soul, because then you're being led to the right pieces of information. You might be led to this podcast here today because you listened to something, or
Mm,
part of you that needed to hear something. So it's not the getting rid of information, it's having more discernment and filtering it out just a little bit by listening to what's inside of you instead of having this external thing tell you what you should be paying attention to, what you should be listening to. And so that has been something that's been a practice of mine too, is I'm not going to miss anything. I've really healed this whole FOMO thing with the internet, because I'm like, I'm not going to miss anything.
yep,
Everything
you're right.
that's for me will come to me, right?
Absolutely.
So but that's a term that we think about and we lean into, and it's a great thing to keep in the back of your mind, because you can just ask yourself, is this really all this over here, whatever that is for you, necessary, or do I need a little space from that? Because
Yes,
that space is where we wonder and where ideas come in and the synchronistic moments happen and the connections and the
yes.
ahas and all of that. But we don't really get to receive those things if we're not creating space for them to emerge and break into our consciousness. We're
Yes,
distracted, right?
exactly, with all the distractions. And I'm also learning, like, what matters, like what
Mm,
really matters,
yeah,
because there's only so much space, in our mind, in our body, each day. And what activities am I engaging in that really don't serve me?
right. What's
Because
essential?
right. It's so what matters most, and then that FOMO,
Yeah,
because
that's a sneaky one.
that's a sneaky one. And then I love how you said it's like that's where the magic, then we connect to ourselves. And but that's not always, it's easier said than done.
Right?
And something I wanted to touch on is, um how can we reconnect to our magic, like when we're feeling like uninspired or not feeling well, or just like blah.
One of the best things, the one of the best things, and I'll just be the first to say I have a love-hate relationship with what I'm about to share. Many of the people, the clients, students, people I've worked with will know what I'm talking about. Journaling. Love-hate relationship. But one of the first
Yeah.
things, well, actually, there's two things I'll just share briefly. The first is journaling, but making it like a ritual process. Because when we have a ritual, which is something where it's an action or a series of actions that we take that are intentional, if you remove the magic from the ritual, it's a chore, right? You put the magic into the experience, it's a ritual. It has meaning, it has substance. And
Okay.
when we have things that are meaningful, it can reaffirm to our mind that we're safe, we'll figure it out, we'll
Mm.
get through. When we take meaning out, this is where a lot of people suffer, when they don't feel they have significance, purpose, connection. When life starts to feel a little dull or meaningless, they've lost that magic. They've likely disconnected from a part of themselves or from something in life. And we have moments of that, and that's natural to happen. But ritual is one of the things that I really believe in. And I've tried to make many different types of rituals. Even something as small as how I get out of bed in the morning can be a ritual. How the thoughts I have in my mind before I go to sleep can be a ritual. But just to answer that, journaling is one of the ways, because it gives a place for all of that's going on, all the things, whether it's an inner critic, maybe we're just holding a lot in our minds. Some of us are holding space for a lot of people and situations, and that energy's got to go somewhere.
For sure.
So writing is one of the ways that we can really help us to move it through, and without editing, without it being attached to what we're writing, without filtering it, just letting it move through. That is something that's been key for me. The other thing that has really helped me, and this is interesting, and I'll just share, like, I do a lot of work with archetypes and imagery and the imaginal life, and living creatively through imagination and myth and metaphor and stories and all of this. And one of the things I would do is take a hot salt bath. And it was a blessing how this little ritual came about. But I've been taking salt baths my entire life. But one particular time, about not even quite a year ago, I was really struggling, and I got into the water. It was midnight. So my brain is like, go to bed. You've been laying here for 2 hours, go to sleep. And my soul's like, get in the tub. Get in the tub. So I do. I go in the bathtub. I'm trying to be quiet, not wake up everybody in my household. And I put the hot water in, and I dump the salt in. And then I hear, and then my intuition is like, turn off the light and open the window. Dark. I'm in the dark in the tub. I'm starting to feel a little bit like a crazy person at this point.
No, I love it.
Right? I crack the window, and all of a sudden I hear the crickets outside. I'm in this hot water. There's a gentle breeze, and I'm right back in my body. And I didn't realize how ritual sensory information for some of us can be overstimulating, and it can lead to stress response and a bit of anxiety. So I'm not going to recommend that for every person, but I would share, if you're someone that's going through a hard time and you're trying to reconnect with magic or the light within you, one of the best ways to do that is through the light of nature. And so me sitting in that tub, being really present, it gave my mind a job, because I felt like I was doing something. But instead of laying in bed, I'm laying in the salt water. The window open, I hear the sound, and it was very instinctual, but I just had this intuitive sense of, let this heaviness that you're feeling in your heart go with the sound of those crickets. And I just visualized that one by one, they're chirping away, and all of this is just moving out and through that window. It wasn't a practice. It wasn't following a visualization. It wasn't written down. It was nothing I had ever seen before, but it worked. And I did that many times. And next thing you know, instead of feeling, let's say, heaviness or intensity, I started to feel lightness and anticipating the joy of the relaxation of being in that tub and hearing those creatures outside the window and the breeze coming in. I started to have gratitude and appreciation in the same space where suffering had completely occupied who I was at that time. That I didn't do anything different physically. Same water, same tub, right? Same salt. What I did is I allowed something new to emerge by staying with it. I didn't try to wish it away. I didn't try to do a whole lot of positive thinking. I'm not against it. I love all of that. But sometimes when you're in this space, you just got to be really present and allow yourself to feel it.
Yes.
That wasn't something I knew how to do. So long story, but journal, hot bath. If you have a
I
window for crickets, go for it.
I know Brandy's talked to me about the hot bath before, and I recently had
Mm.
the opportunity to do that, and it was amazing. But I wanna go back to what you said when you said you just stayed there. So do you mean that you just stayed with it, like that uncomfortable feeling?
Yeah.
The feeling of pain or uncomfort or whatever you were feeling. So instead of, like you said, wishing it away
Yeah.
or doing affirmations, you just allowed yourself to feel
I allowed myself to
pain?
feel, but I did use my breath. I did use my breath. I know some different breath work type of techniques, and that was something I did. Was a rhythmic, circular type of a breathing, not with a lot of effort, because it felt like, if we trust ourselves in those moments, even if we don't quite know what we need, another part of us does. And if we can just trust in that idea without even seeing evidence of it, it will be led there. And so that was one of the things that did come to me, was before the joy, the magic, the crickets, and the wind element, and all the things that kind of became more magical later. It was just focus on your breath. Let this move with your breath. Very simple. I wasn't doing an affirmation. I wasn't saying this is going to be amazing or
Mhm.
I'm wonderful or whatever. It was very reflective of what I was feeling, and being honest about that, staying with it, and using the breath, but not trying to control it or make it go away, because then I just would have also been avoiding that feeling, right? So even though the breath did help move it through, it was slow. Sometimes it was a week of, I didn't live in the tub for a week, but every night revisiting just a little more, and feeling a little better. With this conversation around this idea of all this information can sometimes come with a sense of instant gratification. And that's something we're also learning how to be with. So in these moments when something isn't moving right away and we feel a little frustrated, that's part of our conditioning that we have an opportunity to confront in a healthy way and say, I don't like feeling this discomfort. I'm just going to give myself permission to be pissed and upset about that.
Yeah.
And how patient can I be? Because I deserve this. The
Yes.
part of me that knows better and knows how to help me feel better, I deserve that.
Mhm.
And if this is the way through, I'm just going to lean in. And that's what I kept doing, just finding new ways to lean in over and over again.
Mhm. And again, the patience, the delayed gratification. And sometimes I feel like I'm a glutton for punishment because it's like I keep leaning in and it keeps being uncomfortable. But I've learned from experience that there's a delayed gratification eventually. And for me, it's when I feel like I can't take it anymore or when I'm frustrated or I'm about to snap, it just happens.
Yeah. It's
And it just doesn't
interesting.
happen overnight. It's because I
Right?
keep
You're
and that I
consistent.
yeah, and I appreciate, the talk about breathing. Something else that, we've talked about is, and I wanna see your perspective on this, is how can we utilize our imagination to get through the unknown?
I'll tell you, it's like one of my greatest unknown gifts that I've been discovering more and more about myself. The imagination is everything.
Mm,
And I feel like a lot of times, in the way many of us have been raised, it's not valued. It's only valued and appreciated and kind of cute when you're a kid. But as you start to get older, imagination, we start to judge that as in not being grounded in this reality, or not being in the real world, or not being a serious professional person, but the imagination is a gift of your soul. I
mm,
really believe that. I've never said that before. That literally just came through me, but it's a gift of the soul, because I feel like it shifts perspective. And you and I know, we do very similar work in different ways with people, with their minds and their mindsets and their psychology and their inner dialogue, that metaphor. and can sometimes give us another lens to view something from someone else's story or situation or experience. Because sometimes when we're going through something, we're blind to it. We're blind to what we need. We may not remember to use our tools. We might feel separate or disconnected from the things that could nurture us or help us kind of find ourselves again. And so one of the ways that we can really work through that is with the imagination in a healthy, grounded way. And so, like, for example, I have this thing that I would do with clients where if they're going through a really difficult time, I would ask them as a part of their homework to go research a fairy tale. And just go look for a story, and look for a story that seems to carry some type of resonance to what you're thinking, feeling, or experiencing. Not the whole story, not word for word. You don't have to live in a castle or be lost in the woods, but is there something you can identify with? And I can't even express to you the level of healing I've experienced witnessing people discover a process they didn't even know was happening until they viewed it in something outside of themselves in another way. And so I've had people tell me one very emotional story was around someone who identified with the ugly duckling story. Never realized it in that way until she sat with it. What it did was not just showed her an internal process that was happening for her, a psychological, we call it psychological movement of following the story and seeing what's happening and what's moving within us as we're relating to that or observing that. But the thing that it also gave her was permission to release the emotions that were stored. So as she's like recounting her version of the ugly duckling, she starts to weep.
Oh,
And then the weep just turns into this like really quiet, deep movement of like, you just know she was just in it. And I can't even explain what that did for me then as the observer of that, and to see the power of that. I've had the same thing witnessing people talk about the Wizard of Oz, or different stories where they can see a piece of themselves. And if we can do that, it widens the scope. It helps us to expand our imagination. And then we can think about, well, who are the helpers, right? There's always helpers. There's always somebody in the story that steps in on some level. Sometimes it's the animals that come in, or an angel or something else. There's some type of support that shows up.
the
Or,
donkey shows up.
what's that?
The donkey
Or
from
the
the
donkey, right? Like with the wisdom. Are you kidding me? And it changes everything, and then it's like, oh, we're not just drawn to those things because they're cute stories and they make us feel good, although that's a piece of it. There is something very real and alive that's happening in that moment that's also unfolding in us as we are the observer of it. So that is a little something that people can do, is go look for something that maybe gives words to this in a way that you can't quite articulate because maybe you're really deep within it, or not feeling like you know how to express what's going on. Children can do this a little bit more naturally. They're actually more open to this kind of a thing than we are. But there's something also magical that we reclaim with this idea of enchantment. We sort of like reclaim that for ourselves, and we anchor it into the present moment. So it's not just a part of our past, our childhood. We take it with us forward. And that to me is just another piece of magic that comes alive in someone's healing journey. Or it doesn't even have to be about healing. It can just be connection. It can be inspiration. It's just beautiful. It's a beautiful thing to watch.
I love that, because I know that we learn from stories. Well, especially for me, I learn best from stories and metaphors.
Mhm.
And when you brought the fairy tale to my attention, it resonated, because you're right. It's like there's always, the hero's journey typically,
Yeah.
in the fairy tale. And as we're watching, I don't think we realize, like you said, unconsciously, we're seeing, the patterns, and then we're observing, and then it helps us, process, or whatever needs unfolding within us. So I never knew that. But then once I sat with it, I realized that that's how I've learned or related. It was to stories, metaphors. It may not have been in the fairy tales,
Yeah.
um, but definitely in, the enchantment, stories that I read or watch. They were
Mhm.
so helpful, not even realizing it. And I've learned so much from metaphors and stories.
Yeah.
I never like it went over my head until we talked about it. And
Absolutely.
that's how people learn best too. I mean, I could be wrong if I remember correctly, through storytelling and metaphors.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. One of the things too, combining the senses with that also. So sometimes smell can like bring a memory back and, those kind of things. But what's nice about fairy tale or movies, film, literature, art is it gives us a little distance. It
Mhm.
gives us a little distance because we're observing someone's creation, right? Even if it relates and it resonates and it's doing all this stuff within us, it gives us the ability to be in proximity to something without having to put all of us on the table if we're not ready to move through something just yet, if we're still learning about ourselves, or for some of us, if it's an event that could be too triggering. It gives us a safe psychological distance from whatever is activating because it's a fairy tale, right? There's still a part of us. It's like, oh, it's just make believe. It's just whatever. Yet, like there's something soothing in that, and so it can help people too if they're really wanting to do some work but are afraid or nervous. It's just that sense of separation, because now instead of, let's say, us sitting here and you saying to me, well, Melissa, tell me your like deepest, darkest, whatever, or what are you working on, what do you want to
How you
dig
doing?
into, right? Like if it's you, in truth, I'd be like, let's go. But most people are going to be like, I don't know, like I don't, you know what I mean? All this stuff gets stirred up and we don't know, how much do I reveal? What if I don't even know what's going on? And maybe I can't identify what I'm feeling or experiencing. But if it's like, hey, I'm going to share this story with you. That's the other thing you can do, is you can actually just choose a story and see how it reflects for someone else.
Mhm.
And I just want you to pay attention to, how does this feel in your body when you hear these words? What comes to mind when you think of this story or this experience? And the beautiful thing is, all of this, the creative way that the psyche can reveal information doesn't have to be threatening or re-triggering for someone. So it's a beautiful way to help them navigate a really difficult time. We were talking about this a little bit, where like a lot of these fairy tales will be like, the little girl wandering into the dark forest. A lot of them start that way. And
Right.
it's interesting, because in depth psychology, the way that we would view that is the forest would represent the unconscious. And here's this innocence, it could be the inner child, or it could be a part of us, right? That's maybe a bit naive even. Some of them are inexperienced and haven't quite been through the world. And so they're walking into this darkness, this unknown. But then when they do, even though these things cross their path, even if it's like, the big bad wolf or all these different things, there's helpers. There's usually an intuitive guiding force. There's something. And so that can even help us in our own challenge to go, maybe I don't know who that guide is just yet, or maybe I haven't felt that support yet, but they're there. And if I stay on this path and I keep going where I feel like I'm really meant to go, they will be there. They
Yes.
will show up, and I will be more open to recognizing them because I have a belief within me that it's possible, because this story just showed me another way.
Yes. I love that. And I love fairy tale anyway, and I love imagination and story. So
It's
that's
so good.
perfect.
Totally.
Hi, you know what? We're gonna say hi to several people that are joining us.
Yes. Oh,
Yeah.
you lovely people. Oh my gosh.
Yes,
So
amazing
fun.
people. Brandy, always good to have Brandy, I'm like Amber Marie's with us, and Vicky Martinelli, Susie
Hi, guys.
McLaughlin, BJ Oliver is with us, Judy
Oh,
James, Sam Beadle. So thank you, everyone for joining. Judy Schmidt is with us.
so good to see you all.
Skinner, Rachel Elizabeth, Anne is with us, Cynthia Stoneman. So
Hello. Hello.
yes, hello. This has been so fun. It just brings back so many memories of just fun times and just such a great community. I'm so grateful that we had to have this conversation today, because I
Me
can go on for hours with you.
I know. And we have it. It's so fun. And then we're like, wait a minute, we have to get back to the world.
So if
What?
there's one thing that you can leave the audience with, and then just let them know something new, where they can find you and what's going on.
Ooh, well, I've got some interesting things percolating that have been coming together in this year and a half of unknown in my own life. The best thing to do right now is probably to follow me on social media, Melissa Kim Corter. My website is also melissacorter.com. And that is the easiest thing to do for some of the announcements and things I'll be coming out with shortly on some new offerings and programs and things like that. I'm finalizing a couple things, and so if you follow me in any of those channels, then you'll see some announcements coming on what's next.
Super exciting. Very, very exciting for what's next.
Another doorway, another threshold, right?
Old. And this is fun. I love to play. Like, this is play for me. Don't go away, Melissa. I appreciate you being here, playing with me today very
Oh,
much,
sure.
bringing the magic. And thank you, everyone who's watching. I really appreciate you very much. I'm grateful for you being here. I know there's so many other places you can be, so thank you so much. And please share and like. We're grateful for you being here. And if you're watching the replay, let us know that you're here. And as always, I wish you incredible rest of the day and week ahead. And I'll be back next time. Melissa, thank you so much. And
you.
thank you, everyone, for being here with us. We love you. Have a great day.